From Indonesia, rescuers racing to find missing hikers after volcano eruption. From Turkey, President says Netanyahu should be tried for alleged war crimes. From United States, Ukraine President Zelensky to address senators by video. From New Zealand, MPs terminate oath of allegiance to King Charles. And now to the rest of our stories. Niger's junta on Monday scrapped two key military agreements that the West African nation signed with cooperation. Before the coup that disposed the country's president, Mohamed Bazoum, Niger had been the West and Europe's last major security partner in the Sahel, the vast regions south of Sahara Desert that Islamic extremist group have turned into the global terror hotspot. In a memo, Niger's Foreign Affairs Ministry said the government has decided to withdraw the privileges and immunities granted under the EU military partnership mission in Niger that was launched in February and consequently has no legal obligation related to that partnership. It also dismissed the EU civilian capacity building mission established in 2012 to strengthen Niger's international security sector, effectively revoking its approval for the missions. The developments are the latest in growing political tensions between Niger. Kurov met with Niger's junta leader, General Abdurrahmane Chiani, and Minister of State for National Defense, Alifo Modi. The two sides held more meetings on Monday to discuss military and defense issues. At the center of the discussions is the strengthening of cooperation between Moscow, which has risen to 13 people after a worker died at a hospital, the mine operator said Monday. Impala Platinum said that a worker died Sunday from injuries sustained when the elevator plummeted around 200 meters down the shaft of a platinum mine while carrying workers to the surface after their shift on November 27. 11 workers died that day, while the latest victim was the second mine worker to die at a hospital. The mine operator said that 50 workers remained hospitalized, with 8 of them in critical care. Impala Platinum and the South African government announced an investigation into what mine officials called a highly unusual tragedy. The industrial elevator was carrying 86 workers to the surface when it suddenly dropped back down into the shaft, which is a kilometer deep. The mine in the northern city of Rustenburg was the world's court. We have urgently appealed for civilian lives to be protected and respected on all sides, in line with international humanitarian law, and I reiterate that appeal today, end quote, Spoljaric said. Satellite photos analyzed Tuesday by press show that the Israeli military has begun its ground offensive in the southern reaches of the Gaza Strip as part of its war against Hamas. Since the collapse of a temporary ceasefire between Israel and Hamas that saw militants held hostages swapped for Palestinians held in Israeli prisons, the Israeli military has launched an intense campaign of airstrikes and ground fighting in the southern Gaza Strip as well. The satellite photos released by Planet provide the first clear look at the intensity and scope at which the Israelis are fighting. The images shot Sunday by the Planet Labs PBC show Israeli tanks and armored personnel carriers just under 6 kilometers north of the heart of Khan Yunis, the major city of the southern part of the Gaza Strip. Many who fled the Israeli offensive and airstrike campaign in Gaza City North now said they are working on a longer truce. The families of hostages held by Hamas in Gaza say they are set to meet Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after demanding a sit-down with him. The families have sought to meet with Netanyahu and his wartime cabinet since a truce deal between Israel and Hamas that saw the release of 105 hostages expired last week. Since Hamas' October 7 attack, many families have complained that they were not adequately kept informed of the efforts to secure their loved ones' release. About 240 people were taken hostage. Families say Netanyahu and other leaders have for days dodged their request to meet. The meeting is expected to take place Tuesday. Families say against Hamas. An Israeli TV channel has aired new footage that appears to show an Israeli woman struggling against her 7 captors as she was taken hostage into Gaza on October 7th. The video is said to show Amit Tosana, 40, being dragged on foot into Gaza. She appears to try to slow her captors down by bending over. One captor then throws her body over his back, and she is seen kicking her legs, what appears to make him fall to the ground. The captors, of whom One of the captors, one of whom is seen striking her, then drape a sheet over her and drag her into Gaza. One of the captors is seen carrying a rifle. Susanna was released last week after more than 50 days in captivity as part of a truce agreement between Israel and Hamas. The footage shot by a security camera was broadcast Monday on Israeli local TV. A Canadian-Israeli philanthropist has donated $100 million to Israel's Ben-Gurion University as part of an effort to help southern Israel recover from the October 7 Hamas attack. Sylvan Adams says it is crucial that we strengthen Israel's south to ensure that Israelis feel safe and secure to rebuild their lives in the Negev deserts area. The university said the funds are part of an effort to advance education and campus life. President Daniel Kamovitz said the gift would help it focus on a number of key areas, including the future of Negev region, environmental technologies, and global health. The university says that 82 members of its community, including staff, students, faculty, and family members, were killed in the October 7 attack. At least 15,000 Palestinians in Gaza have died during the fighting in Gaza Strip, an Israeli army official said Monday, offering a figure that is more or less in line with the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministries. The Israeli army said it considers more than 5,000 of the Gaza deaths to be Hamas militants. The Gaza Health Ministry said Monday during a news conference in Khan Yunis, a city in the southern Gaza Strip, that 15,899 people had been killed in Gaza since the October 7 start of the war between Israel and Hamas. Ashraf Al-Qidra, a ministry spokesperson, said women and children account for 70% of the dead. The ministry did not provide precise statistics on the breakdown of the death toll. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's corruption trial has resumed after a hiatus prompted by the October 7 Hamas attack and the wars it set off. Netanyahu is on trial for alleged fraud, breach of trust, and accepting bribes in 3 separate cases involving powerful media moguls and wealthy associates. He denies any wrongdoing. In Monday's hearing, police investigators will be questioned over allegations that Netanyahu promoted regulatory benefits for a telecom company in exchange for favorable coverage from a news outlet it owned. Netanyahu's lengthy trial, which began in 2020, was paused after the Hamas attack when the country's courts were put under emergency status and all but shut down. The last hearing took place at the end of September. You are watching the international news on Atlantic Television Network. We will be back after this break.
We wish you a Merry Christmas.
It's Christmas season! Hooray! A time to make merry with loved ones, a time to give thanks, and a time to be a blessing. May your holiday season be filled with joy, laughter, and beautiful moments. From all of us in Morrison Communications Limited, Wish 99.5 FM and Atlantic Television Network, we wish you a Merry Christmas full of amazing experiences. Cheers to a beautiful year end.
This is the international news on Atlantic Television Network. Now to the rest of our stories. Hundreds of Indonesian rescuers have been racing to find a dozen hikers who went missing after a volcano eruption killed 13 people. The dead hikers were found on Monday near the crater of Mount Merapi on the island of Sumatra, with rescue officials announcing 11 deaths the same day and 2 more on Tuesday. Others were found alive and carried down the mountain in arduous rescue efforts hampered by further eruptions and bad weather. The volcano spewed an ash tower 3,000 meters taller than the volcano itself into the sky on Sunday. Quote, the total number of people Zaki Habibi, who made a 2-hour drive from Padang City, end quote, he said on Monday. A total of 75 hikers were listed by officials as hiking on the mountain since Saturday, with 49 initially accounted for and some suffering burns and fractures. The search will carry on for 7 days, rescue officials said. Those killed were severely burned and forensic workers were prepared quote, Erdogan said. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban demanded on Monday that Ukraine's membership in the European Union and billions of euros in funding meant for the war-torn country to be taken off the agenda at the summit of the bloc's leaders next week. In a letter to European Council President Charles Michel, who will chair the December 14 to 15 summit in Brussels, Orban insisted that a strategic discussion is needed first about Ukraine's European future and warned that forcing a decision could destroy EU unity. The history of mental illness and Islamic radicalizations, officials said. He faces a possible preliminary charge of terrorist-related murder for the Saturday night attack that raised fresh questions about security in Paris before it holds the Olympic Games next year. Quotes, this is a case that links radical Islam undeniably and mental illness. I must tell the French people the truth. April of this year, officials said. Britain announced plans to slash the number of migrants arriving by legal routes on Monday, raising the minimum salary they must earn in a skilled job by a third amid pressure on Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to tackle record net migration figures. High levels of legal migrations have dominated Britain's political landscape for more than a decade and were a key factor in the 2016 vote to leave the European Union. Sunak has promised to gain more control after lawmakers in his Conservative Party criticized his record ahead of an election expected next year, with the opposition Labour Party far ahead in opinion polls. But businesses and trade unions both attacked the measures as counterproductive and challenging for the private sector and state-run health service, both dogged by labour shortages. Figures last month showed annual net migration to the United Kingdom hit a record of 745,000 in 2022 and has stayed at high levels since, with many migrants now coming from places like India, Nigeria and China instead of the EU. Home Secretary James Cleverly, today we are taking radical action to bring it down, end quote, said Sunak, who is also trying to deport migrants who arrived illegally to Rwanda. Cleverly said the government would raise the minimum salary threshold for foreign skilled workers to £38,700 from its current level of £26,200, though health and social workers will be exempt. Other measures included stopping foreign health workers bringing in family members on their visas, increasing a surcharge migrants have to pay to use the health service by 66% and raising the minimum income for family visas. In October, the government's independent migration advisor recommended decades in what prosecutors portrayed as one of the most brazen and long-running betrayals in the history of the U.S. Foreign Service. Manuel Rocha wept as he sat handcuffed in Miami federal court on charges that he engaged in clandestine activity on Cuba's behalf since at least 1980 U.S. government officials about his contacts. The complaint unsealed Monday is short on specifics on how Rocha may have assisted Cuba, but it provides a vivid case study of what American officials, international humanitarian law, UN spokesman